Good morning, everyone. So, welcome you all to this webinar series on behalf of the President of the ARDOETC, Dr. Yetunji. We welcome everybody to this August occasion. So, this will be a first among many more series, many more of its kind in future. So, once again, I want to appreciate our speaker, our facilitator today, Professor FJ Owotade, for honoring us today. So without wasting much of our time today, so we'll start on time. I know we'll have other things to do this weekend. So we'll start with our president opening remark. So I want to invite Dr. Ni Oyetunji for his opening remark. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Deputy General Secretary, Dr. Oladipo. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir. Yes, sir.
Good morning, distinguished colleagues, esteemed members of the Association of Resident Doctors, and our highly respected guest speaker, Professor F.J. Owotade. It is with great honor and enthusiasm that I welcome you all to this important webinar, a critical part of the ARDOETC 2025 webinar series, which focuses on proposal writing and research methodology. This event underscores our commitment to advancing academic excellence, professional development, and intellectual growth among ourselves. Today's topic is a reflection of our collective ambition to build a future where every doctor is not only a skilled clinician, but also a pioneering researcher equipped to make meaningful contribution to the global body of knowledge. The ability to write compelling proposals and apply sound research methodology is not just a skill, it is a necessity in the pursuit of excellence in medicine. I would like to specially appreciate our distinguished facilitator, Professor F.J. Owotade, a renowned professor of oral medicine and consultant oral and maxillofacial surgeon at Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital, Ile-Ife. Sir, your wealth of experience, groundbreaking contributions to research, and commitment to mentoring have made you a beacon of inspiration for many. It is truly a privilege to have you guide us through this section. To my fellow doctors, I urge you to seize this opportunity, engage, ask questions, and take notes, for today's insights will undoubtedly shape your career and research trajectory. As doctors, we must continuously equip ourselves with the tools and knowledge needed to innovate and advocate for better healthcare system. In conclusion, let me reiterate our unshakable resolve as an association to prioritize the professional growth of every member. Today, let us continue to break barriers, set high standards, and build a legacy of excellence for ARDOETC. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and I wish us all an impactful and stimulating session. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. President. So for that awesome welcome opening remark. So the next now is for us to introduce our guest speaker. For too many of us, especially in this hospital, we know him. Especially anybody who's called in this great citadel of knowledge. So, but I'll just give a brief citation of our guest speaker. So, citation for Professor F.J. Owotade. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is both a privilege and an honor to present to you our esteemed guest speaker, Professor Foluso John Owotade, a towering figure in the world of oral medicine and maxillofacial surgery, whose illustrious career is a testament to excellence, dedication, and unrelenting pursuit of knowledge. Professor Owotade is a distinguished professor of oral medicine and a consultant oral and maxillofacial surgeon at the Obafemi Awolowo University and its teaching hospital, the Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital Complex, Ile-Ife. He is the product of rigorous academic training. Professor Owotade obtained his dental degree from the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University and pursued further specialization in oral and maxillofacial surgery, attaining the status of a fellow of the West African College of Surgeons. His insatiable thirst for knowledge and academic advancement has seen him participate in several advanced training programs, both within and outside Nigeria. including courses at renowned institutions across the globe. Professor Owotade has not only excelled as a clinician, but also as a prolific researcher. His contributions to the field of oral medicine and surgery are groundbreaking, with numerous publications in peer-reviewed journals that have been cited widely by scholars around the world. His research interests span critical areas such as the epidemiology of oral diseases, molecular studies in maxillofacial pathology, and innovations in surgical techniques. In recognition of his outstanding contributions, Professor Owotade has received multiple awards and honors that affirm his status as a leading light in his profession. Among these are accolades for academic excellence, service to the dental profession, and groundbreaking research. His exemplary work has elevated the status of oral medicine and surgery, both nationally and internationally. Beyond his academic and professional achievements, Professor Owotade is an outstanding mentor whose guidance has shaped the careers of countless students, residents, and young professionals. His passion for capacity building and mentorship is unparalleled, and his mentees continue to excel in various fields of medicine and dentistry. In the realm of professional service, Professor Owotade has held several leadership positions, contributing immensely to the growth of professional bodies, including the Nigerian Dental Association and other health-focused organizations. His leadership qualities and vision have been instrumental in driving progress and enhancing collaboration within these associations. Despite his towering achievement, Professor Owotade remains dedicated to community service and societal development. His involvement in medical outreaches, public health advocacy, and capacity building programs reflect his deep concern for the welfare of the underserved. Today, we are honored to have this giant in the field of oral medicine and surgery guide us through the intricacies of proposal writing and research methodology, a subject he has mastered and continues to advocate as essential for academic and professional growth. Ladies and gentlemen, with profound respect and admiration, please join me in welcoming Professor F.J. Owotade, a scholar, mentor, leader, and an inspiration to all. Thank you very much. Prof, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate the invitation, and I also want to appreciate the kind words. It's a pleasure, really. I think I'm the one that's privileged to be here. Probably one of the things that I didn't put in my CV, but which I'm very proud of, is that I'm also a life member of the ARD. The Femi Owadayo executive gave me an award and made me a life member of ARD when I was acting chief medical director. That was over 10 years ago. So it's my pleasure to be here, and it's my pleasure to share my experience in this area with you. I hope you can see my screen. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I'm going to share, proposal is part of academic writing. So, and I know that a number of us are at different stages of our academic journey. So I'm going to give like an overview covering, it will cover proposal, but it will extend to dissertation, because for most of the colleges, the proposal is the initial part of your dissertation that you write eventually. And I know that there are many residents who are at that stage of their career, so they have gone beyond proposal writing. It's like I have seen Judith online. We were still discussing a few days ago, and I know that there are more people in that category that are trying to write a thesis. So what I'm giving are just guidelines, and it will help everybody. So thank you so much. So academic writing is something that you'll be involved in one time or the other. It is how you present your ideas, the analysis of your research, and even the way you construct effective arguments. You may find something as part of your research that you want to communicate to the world. And it's actually a crime to find something and not communicate it. The way you communicate it, the process of communicating your findings to the world, is actually what we are talking about. And it varies from field to field, from discipline to discipline, from one stage of academic career to the other. But depending on what you would try to do, there are 7 types of academic writing. You may write a chapter in a textbook. I've done like 6 of that. You may write essays. You may write research articles. You may have to write a technical report. You may even have to write an annotated bibliography. And then you may write a thesis, dissertation, or even do literary analysis. I'm not going to go into details of each one, but the one that really concerns you is the thesis or dissertation, which is the result of research activity that you submit as part of a degree or a kind of academic qualification. And I think that is the one that concerns us. This is like an example of an essay. But at your stage now, the form of academic writing that is most relevant to you is the one we are talking about, writing a thesis or dissertation. And some people find it like trying to write a thesis is like trying to slay a dragon. And I've been in that shoe many years ago. I started my academic career with residency. Of course, like somebody had hinted, we are trained to be good clinicians. So by the time I was finishing my qualification as a fellow, this was in, I think, 1997, I had no qualms about knowing what to do as a maxillofacial surgeon. But then here I was as a lecturer. I had no academic training, so to say. And so I was compelled to write. Even writing the thesis, writing the dissertation for the part 2 was going through hell for me. Maybe that's a story for another time. Before my time, people were using manual typewriter to write their project or their part 2 dissertation. And then when it got to us, they insisted I must use a computer to type. What some of you take for granted now, I had to go to Lagos to actually type and print my part 2 dissertation. So it was tough. It was an uphill task. And even now, a number of us find it a bit challenging. So I'm happy you are doing this, and I've done this kind of training across continents for more than 20 years. So I think people need empowerment, because if you're not taught, you don't know what to do. And we're trying to prevent this. You might have a little bit of it. My thesis is written in blood, in sweat, in tears, a lot of coffee if you're like a coffee drinker, like some of us. So what really is a thesis? A thesis is that you want to prove that you're writing a long essay or dissertation, which involves your personal research, and it is written by a candidate for a university degree, or like in this case, for your fellowship degree or diploma. So we interchange between what is a thesis and dissertation. Really, they are similar and they are often used interchangeably. Applicable to degree for degree. So if you're writing it in the USA, the thesis is what you write for a master's and the dissertation for a PhD. They insist that the dissertation is the master's and the PhD, the text. But our fellowship, we call it dissertation. And there are many components of, and that you need to know. If you're writing a proposal or you're writing a thesis, you need to know the essential components. I hope practically all of us have downloaded the thesis or the proposal writing guidelines for the colleges. If you have for your college, just unmute and so that I can know that you have it. How many people have downloaded the guides for both national or West Africa, depending on where you're trying to submit your proposal? Does anybody have it?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. All right. So at least one person is testifying that they have it. Okay, because it's very critical. Now, I've taken all kinds of exams. I've done both fellowship and academic degree. Every examining body will have some form of guideline. Now, this is guideline for the PhD that I did somewhere. And then this is the screenshot from the National Postgraduate Medical College. You can see that it says all faculties are involved in writing of dissertation, so they call their own dissertation. This involves the formative stage, which is the research proposal, and then the final dissertation. So you see, you can't really separate the two. The research proposal is the initial part of it, but you are building your final dissertation on what you have done to start with. So, and you can see here, guidelines are needed for uniformity in the presentation of research proposals and dissertation. So you shouldn't do without a guideline. I've been an examiner in the two colleges for many years, and you still see people submitting final dissertation and they didn't follow the guideline. I just returned one a few weeks ago. You know, acknowledgement is supposed to follow they've put the order there. This man just turned the order upside down. So it's obviously that he didn't read the guidelines. And they said that there is a place where the Roman numeral will stop and the Arabic numerals will start. He missed everything. So it's like he didn't read the guidelines. And if people have produced guidelines and you have not read it, then you have not helped yourself at all. So, and look at this, the objective of the dissertation in the fellowship program is, among others, to give the candidate a chance to study a subject of his choice in reasonable depth. It is essential that the candidate contributes to a body of knowledge in subject area of study and where possible break new ground. The research performed to answer a research question or support a hypothesis must be both original and make substantial contribution to the existing body of knowledge, highlighting original contributions. In the process of developing a dissertation, the resident is introduced to the process of carrying out a research project and or making observations and documenting same in clear, well-written scientific language, which is understandable English, made to contribute to solving a health problem. So before you even get to this research proposal stage, there are things that you should have done. You must have identified a good research question. That is another topic for discussion. What I usually like to do is to give an overview of the research process, because a lot of people really don't know what research is all about. So I usually start with giving an overview of the research project process, and then the way you go about identifying research question, what is a good research question, how do you formulate a hypothesis, and the objective is to make an original contribution to knowledge. There's no need to reinvent the wheel or to further flog a dead horse, which is what a lot of people are doing. Somebody has looked at the risk factors for preterm births in Ile-Ife. You will now go and do it. The risk factors in Elisha or in Mesile. I mean, it's, a lot of people have challenges finding research topics. And I keep telling people that, you know, it's just a reflection of how much depth of knowledge. Research questions are endless. And one of the things that you should do for yourself is that your research question must be very, very innovative, must be original, it must be relevant, it must be interesting, and you must be feasible is what you should do. You know, a good research question should be final, feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. These are characteristics of good. So I assume that you've gone beyond that stage, but if you haven't, it's a good opportunity for you to go back to the drawing board and start thinking about the research question you want to solve in writing your proposal. So we're looking at the format. Now, this is the format for West Africa College of Surgeons. It's not been reviewed for some time because like I said, I use this format to examine theses and dissertations. But you can see they have broad guidelines for proposals and dissertations. They will specify the font size, the spacing, even assuming that you are going to print. These are and then the IMRAD format and all that. It's quite detailed, much more detailed than this. So when I'm examining a thesis or a proposal, I usually put it side by side. Looking at a general concept, this is just a sample outline. Usually you have the title and the title page. You have your declaration, which you are going to sign, that you are the one that has written the proposal or written the dissertation. You have the abstract if you have completed the work, but for proposal, usually you don't. You have dedication, you have acknowledgements. All these come in the final work. Then you have a table of contents. You have list of figures, list of tables, list of symbols, nomenclature. Then you have the introductory chapter and the central chapters, which are made up of your literature review, the methods and the results. And then the concluding chapter, this is the core. You know, I've put things in different colors. This initial part, the opening glee, what kind of takes you to the dissertation or proposal proper. But this is the core. And then at the end of the day, you have supporting documents to show the authority that you have quoted, the references plus or minus bibliography and appendices. So I like interaction, even though we are using this digital means. Now, can somebody tell me what's the difference between a reference and a bibliography? Anybody can unmute. What is the difference between a reference and a bibliography? I like interaction when I speak. Differences between references and bibliography. Anybody?
Thank you, sir. Sir,
Hello?
a reference is an allusion to the source of an information.
A reference does what?
Is an allusion to the source of an information.
Okay. What about the bibliography?
Bibliography is the study of the origin of the word. Or pays more attention to the origin of the word.
Okay. Okay. Something close to it. Can we have another volunteer? A reference generally contains what you have cited in your work, your proposal, or your dissertation. Whereas a bibliography includes a list of all the sources you have used to generate the ideas in your assignment, including the ones you cite and the ones you don't cite. There are some things you will have consulted, you don't even necessarily have to cite them, but it generally helps you to put your work together. So that is the difference between a bibliography and a reference. Some fields, particularly the arts and all that, they insist that you must do a bibliography. But in core sciences, we do references. Now, just to show the variety can be so wide depending on where you go. Now we're emphasizing academic degrees. Nobody is saying that our fellowship degree is not academic, but now they leave it. So these are some of the infractions that we've seen somewhere. Still on general principles, the headings and numbering should have a consistent format. And it should show the hierarchy. It kind of reflects how you have organized your thesis or your proposal. And there are several ways you can do it. You may use typeface to indicate major headings, like putting chapter titles in capitals, and then maybe the lower levels in title case. For instance, the heading is orofacial infections, everything is in uppercase, and then osteomyelitis is a lower level. But then people now generally put numbers, which is okay. Initially, we are not putting numbers to chapters, but now people add numbers to the heading, which is okay. It just kind of give you the sequence and the interrelation. But you know, one of the things that I've seen is that somewhere along the line, people will lose the numbers. You know, they start numbering an upper section, and then as they continue, the number just disappears. These are some of the funny things that people have done. And then when you number based on hierarchy. You know, like you have, if chapter 3, or if one section is orofacial infections, then a lower level will be 3.1, 3.2, 3.12, 3 point, and so on and so forth. I hope you understand. But there are some rules for numbering. The first level is the chapter. So if you say 1.0, that is chapter 1 or the introduction. Then if you are saying 2 points, you are talking about the literature review and the years. And then 3 points, you are talking about the materials and methods. But if the levels are too many, it becomes confusing. So generally, you are advised to stay within the first 3 levels. That is the example 2.1.1. If you go to 4th level, then maybe you should use typeface or underline to further break it into section. But the way you number and break into section shows the level of organization. In science, in our core science, we are not literature. They just continue to write and write and write. We like to present our facts in an orderly, logical manner. It's not that those people don't, but they write it mostly in prose. So this is what we try to do. So if you go beyond 3, just use typeface to identify it. And if you are using one number, don't put a full stop at the end of it. And then how do you justify? Do you justify it to the left, or do you justify it to the center? Modern trend now involves you justifying to the left. But please note that there are no full stop after the heading. I hope I'm clear so far. Does anybody have any worries or any queries so far? Hello? Hello?
Hello,
Right on,
sir.
sir. We are
Okay, you
listening,
can
sir.
hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. All right. Sometimes I'm back. Sorry. I have 2 sources of internet. So if one fails, I will just go to the other. And I can
Thank you,
assure
sir.
you I have plenty of data on it. But you know, you can't always tell with Nigeria network.
Yes, sir. Thank you
So
very much,
sorry.
sir.
But I know we are back together. So we're still talking about general principles. And let's go to the text structure. When you write, one of the things you try to do is to be comprehensive yet precise. And it's something that comes with the art of writing. You can present the same fact. The two of us may be trying to present the same fact, but I can present the same information just using 10 words, and some other person can present it using 50 words. I know some of you know about Hiagbo. It was a kind of a comic relief. I don't know if he's still very active in politics. But you don't use the Obahiagmo kind of language to write a dissertation or a proposal. Your thesis must be comprehensive yet precise. And the way to do this is to break down complex statements into lists, is to use the active voice, and then don't use pompous words where simpler words are appropriate. And then avoid empty phrases. Oh, this one irritates me. People are so used to using empty phrases. It has been said that due to the fact that it is interesting to note that, I just remove all that nonsense. It is just very irritating when people write things like that. It just shows they don't know how to write. And then using active voice. For instance, the precipitate was found in a wet condition. Just say the precipitate was wet. Simple. And then the other principle of writing is that if you are citing work that has been done in the past, if you are citing work that is already done, you use past tense. Universal truths, you use it in present tense. The sky is blue, not the sky was blue. And then in modern writing, the active voice is used far more often. And that is the standard. You use the active voice to talk. And then avoid sentences that are longer than 25 words. If you are writing and you just count the number of words in a sentence, if it's more than 25 words, by the time the person who is reading it has reached the end of that sentence, he has forgotten what you started talking about in the beginning. And still on general principles of writing, you break your text into manageable sections and paragraphs. After all, that is what you do when you read a textbook. It's the same thing you do when you're writing a proposal or a dissertation. You break it into manageable sections. The college or the examining body has already advised you on how to break it down. We want chapter 1 to have this, chapter 2. So each one now, you will now decide how to break it down into paragraphs, into sections and paragraphs. So when a chapter is broken down into sections, and those sections are made up of paragraphs. Now, a paragraph is very critical to know what is in a paragraph, because a paragraph generally has 3 parts. The paragraph has a central statement, which is usually the first thing you highlight when you're writing a paragraph. The first sentence introduces what that paragraph is all about. Then you now write statements or sentences to support that main central statement or that main fact. And by the time you have supported that main fact and you want to go to the next paragraph, you now write a bridging sentence that will lead you into the next paragraph. One problem that I see, I had that problem too, with medical people, is that we are used to thinking in facts. We don't know how to write stories. So that's why doctors write very badly. The way we are trained in medical school is to present facts. But the people in other fields are used to telling stories. So why is it that people rarely forget a good story? Meanwhile, the stuff you have read in your textbook, you tend to forget because you have not made it into a story. But when you make your writing into a story, it becomes very delightful to read. And it is the way you break it down into sections and paragraphs and the contents of those paragraphs that make your work very, very interesting to read. I hope you are following the discussion, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, now, how do you form a story? You connect sentences in a logical way using transition words. For instance, we want to show an addition, a second point, again, also, another, besides. We want to compare phrases like by comparison. We want to give example, for example, for instance, in particular, namely, particularly, specifically. We want to emphasize a point, above all, certainly, chiefly, especially, indeed. We want to indicate a relationship as a result, consequently, for this reason. We want to introduce a qualification or a concession, admittedly. After all, despite, doubtless. So if you have this kind of variety of words, it helps your thesis or your proposal or whatever you write to actually form a good story that somebody can read and enjoy reading. With all sense of humility, I've done a lot of reading in my life. I mean, reading theses, reading articles, I just read and read and read. And not two articles or not two academic materials are the same. Some are just an absolute delight to read. And some people, and some readings have, I mean, just torture. I've had one of my senior colleagues send the dissertation of his resident to me. And he just told me, say, Foluso, I can't read this thing. I can't read it. Reading it was just traumatizing and torturing him. So I had to take the senior colleague and an older person. I had to take the pains to go through what that man has written. The man is a professor. Somebody can always improve one way or the other. And then general principles, the more trend is to use capital. I just use capital indiscriminately within their writing. It's very irritating. It is the first word in a sentence that you capitalize, and then the proper nouns, and then common nouns like River Niger. Common nouns are capitalized when you use them as a number. For instance, if you are talking about laboratory, D. If you are going to write color, you must also use COLOR. But generally, our orientation is British English. So, and if you are using use accepted standards of abbreviation. And then one other infraction that people use in writing is they begin a sentence with a numeral. Again, I read that yesterday in somebody's book. You want to start a sentence, say 17 of the 25 people were males. And you write 17 as 17, and you are starting a sentence with that. That is a no-no. And then when you are writing, ordinals from the first to 10th should be written out. So if you are writing 3 in academic prose, you don't write it as letter 3. You write it as THREE, anything from the first to 10th. Okay. When we come to you generally tend to use graphs, photographs, drawings, and diagrams. These are referred to as figures. All of them also have principles, the way we use them. I'm sure in the proposal now, they are saying don't put a figure in your proposal, particularly in the, but if you are writing it, if you are writing the results, you can put figures. Some will insist, some will say don't put, some will say put. But when you're talking about figures, you're talking about graphs, photographs, drawings, and diagrams, and they can be very, very useful in bringing your point across. When you're using a figure, it must have a number and it must have a descriptive title. Some colleges will say, put the title of the figure above, put it below. I think for West Africa now, you put the title of the figure below and you put the title of the table above, but just know what your examining body is asking you to do. And graphs should clearly illustrate the point which the writer wishes to make. So a graph in itself will tell a story, and it should tell a complete story. That just looking at the graph, you are clear. You don't even have to read the text to know what this graph is saying, because you have labeled the axis properly, the y-axis, the x-axis, and then the content there. And if you now have to use a footnote to even make sense of, maybe you use some abbreviations there, you must put that there. And still on the graph, the scale that you are choosing must show the relevant parts, and you don't unnecessarily extend on the grid. I have a separate lecture on appropriate use of table and graphs. There is a lot. People use graphs and they use and they use them without using them properly. On your graph, the scale you are using should be easily read, and should be restricted to multiples or submultiples of 10. So many rules on graphs. Units should be clearly stated and written so that they can be read easily. And the graph should have a caption. It should be brief, but should be self-explanatory. And to ensure clear reproduction, graphs should not be overburdened with details. Some graphs are so detailed that it will take you another 10 hours just to make sense of it. You don't do those kind of graphs. If you have to use more than one graph to present this, I hope you are still with me now. What is wrong with this graph? If you've attended my lectures, some of my research training lectures, you will know quickly what is wrong with this graph. But if people are used to looking at graphs, anybody volunteer? Can anybody tell me what is wrong with this graph? Please criticize this graph. I've just given some principles. It's trying to show the relationship between
the y-axis was not labeled.
Excellent. So there's no label. So what is on this side, you don't know. Okay. So is a plaque score, is a kind of a score. You see, it's total plaque score. And then this is the years of smoking cigarettes. We want to see if there is a relationship between smoking cigarette and plaque. Plaque is what accumulates around your teeth that becomes hardened and becomes calculus. So cigarette smoking can cause plaque accumulation. So somebody has done this kind of, so very good point. The y-axis is not labeled, so you don't know what is actually here. But generally, this is a good graph. Is the lowest graph, locally weighted scatter plot smoothing. It shows you the non-parametric relationship between the variable on the x-axis and on the y-axis. Okay. So still on general principles, we have not even gone to sections of each of your proposal or your dissertation. We're just talking about general principles. Now use a clear font like Arial or Times New Roman. And if you want to use italics, you should generally avoid it unless they are necessary. Font size 10 or 12 and black is the general principle. And then the spacing should be like 1.5 for double line as required by your college. But when you are writing a thesis, the outline must be clearly discernible. In fact, that's what I usually start with when I supervise a candidate. Either you are indicating the sections or you are not. But if you are writing an introduction, for instance, what is the outline? The first part, what is it going to talk about? The second part, the third part, the fourth part. So this is how you start writing, and it's going to help you if you do that as well. I want to write this chapter. my literature review, what is the outline? So you first write an outline, then you build up on those outlines, okay? And generally, the first draft is the author's responsibility, not your supervisor. So you are the one who will determine how accurate the information is. You are the one who will clarify ambiguities. You are the one who will emphasize important issues. And it's your responsibility to check your spelling. The software, the word processor you use, will underline it if the spelling is not okay. But you see, students or candidates or residents will still send their book to us with a lot of spelling errors. And then the software is already underlining that this spelling is wrong, but they still send it to us like that. Say, a guy in Maka, the supervisor will read it, so it's his own business. So you ensure integrity and so on and so forth. Okay. So I hope you are still with me. Does anybody have any question or clarification so far? We have not even reached halfway of our discussion.
Yes.
Yes, I hope you are following. Does anybody have any question or comment at this point?
I'm following, sir.
Okay, I should continue.
Yes, sir. Yes, I can. Yes, sir.
All right. So when you are talking about your proposal, your thesis, or dissertation, what does it really contain? You're addressing a series of problems. You want to describe what we know about the problem. You want to talk about what you want to do to solve the problem, or if you have written it, what you did to solve the problems. You also want to make sense of your results. And then you're also telling us how further progress can be made. This is just like an overview of the research process. Like I mentioned earlier, you've identified a problem. You describe to us what is known about the problem. You tell us what is not known and what you want to find out. And then if you have done, so in your proposal, you tell us how you are going to do it. And then if you have done it already and you're writing a thesis or a dissertation, you're now making sense of the results. Were you able to accomplish your objectives one by one? If you have, then what is this? What is the meaning of the results you have? And then how can we make further progress based on what you have? What are the conclusions and what are the recommendations? And then what further studies need to be done? We found this. Every observational study will always generate a hypothesis. So I tell people that if you are looking for a topic to write upon, it's not difficult. Go and read somebody's article in that field or on that topic. They will tell you what they found, but they will tell you what they still don't know or what needs to be done further. So that is where you now start your own investigation. So they said, although we found A, B, and C, but we don't know why C and A are related. That is giving you a research question. That's where you start from. So you break it down. Your proposal or your thesis will have a title page. And that must reflect the contents of your thesis. Like I was saying, just 2 or 3 days ago, Judith was in my office and we started the discussion from the title of the article. You know, the title of anything you are writing will be the most read part of it. And that title must reflect the contents of your thesis. A title must contain 4 pieces of information at least. It's not written here, but just note it that the title must reflect, if you are doing an analytical study or an interventional study, your title must reflect your predictor variable, which some of you will call independent variable, must reflect your outcome variable, which some of you call dependent variable, must reflect the subjects the people you are carrying the study out on, and it must reflect the type of study you are doing. So 4 things very, very critical: predictor variable, outcome variable, the type of study, and then the study subject. So anybody who reads your title knows exactly who you have carried out the study on or who you want to carry out the study on. They know the variables you are trying to relate. Is there any relationship between cigarette smoking and lung cancer? Is there any relationship between specialty choices and gender? Why is it that 90% of the people you find in ophthalmology are women? You know, a relationship between specialty choices and sex at Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital, a case control study. So you can see that in that title, I have all the essential elements. Anybody who reads that title knows the predictor variable, the outcome variable, the study subjects, and the type of study that I'm doing. So your title reflects your thesis, reflects your hypothesis, reflects what you are trying to investigate, but it must be concise yet informative. And I've told you what information you are putting there. And then use the officially approved title. Once the title has been approved in your proposal, in fact, once your proposal has been approved, you can come up now and start changing some critical aspects of it. And when people are writing titles, they use very silly, redundant phrases. A report of investigations into the national and West Africa. But generally, the title should be short. And if you've coined your words very well, you can, within that 15 or 18 words, you can find a very good title. And then your title page must have your thesis statement, a dissertation submitted to the West Africa College of Surgeons in partial fulfillment of the award of blah, blah, blah. Now let's go to the abstract. If you finish writing your thesis or your dissertation, you must write an abstract. And some people will say that the abstract is probably one of the last things you write, because you are giving an informative summary of what you have done, and then they specify the words, the number of words. Generally for MSc is 150 words, 300 words for a PhD. National Postgraduate Medical College says 400 words or 500 words for West Africa College of Surgeons, somewhere in that neighborhood, okay? But your abstract is so critical. After your title, the most commonly read aspect of any work, either is a thesis, a dissertation, or even a journal article, is the abstract. When they read your title, they will make up their mind if they are going to read your abstract. So if they read your abstract should contain the essential information from your work. But you know what? One of the areas where I have a lot of headache is reading the abstract of people. Oh, abstract. People don't know how to write it. Because what people do is they make conclusions without facts. The hypothetical example I gave you, somebody is writing the results of that study that significantly, and they put a phrase like this, significantly more females are in ophthalmology specialty compared with surgery. P equals 0.002. That person has just written rubbish because they are not giving any information. You are saying significantly more females are in ophthalmology compared with general surgery. And that is your result. And you are putting the p-value. How many females are in surgery out of all the residents? How many females are in ophthalmology out of all the residents? You have not told us that. You are giving a conclusion without the facts. And this is how a lot of people write abstracts. Very, very irritating and very annoying. But the person is reading it. So your abstract must contain facts, data, and then it is the conclusion based on that data that you put in your conclusion. Your result should not be conclusion. I have so many examples, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So when you are writing your abstract, it's very, very important. The critical things in your work is what you are putting in your abstract. And those critical things must be supported by facts, data. And the measure of association is more important than the p-value. A lot of people are running away with the p-value. P-value is nonsense when it comes to evidence of research work. But that's a discussion for another time. It's the lowest level of evidence. Very, very inferior and very unreliable. But people run away with p-value as if it's the ultimate. It's not. So in your abstract, identify major objectives and conclusion. Identify phrases with keywords in the method section. Identify the major results from the discussion or the results section, and assemble all the information into a single paragraph or more than one paragraph. So when you are writing an abstract, you're talking about your major objective. This is an unstructured abstract, for instance. But if you are writing it in an unstructured manner, what are the objectives? The objective of this study was to investigate the relationship between specialty choices and sex at Obafemi Awolowo University. Identify key phrases in your method section. We went about, this study was undertaking, blah, 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 blah. And then the major results. So these are the key things you should find in your. Sorry for the break in transmission. Again, the same challenges with internet. I hope you can see my screen and hear me. Maybe
Yes,
I
sir.
should quickly try and round up because
Yes, sir.
it's like,
Yeah, welcome back, sir.
all right, so I'm back. So I don't hold you for too long. But there's a lot to talk about here, really. So how do you write your introduction? Look at the three critical things that are important in your introduction. What do we know about the topic? So that is the general overview that you give. So provide and critical review of the major findings in that area. Then what are the gaps? What don't we know? Every body of knowledge has a gap. Nobody knows everything about everything. That is the truth in life. Even if you think you know everything about a topic, tomorrow things might change. And then you're back to square one. So what do we know about the topic? What don't we know? Those are the gaps in knowledge. Then what are we now showing? So what do you want to do? So that's what is in your introduction. And then to write a good introduction, the paragraphs are very critical. Your first paragraph should give a brief background in present tense to establish context, relevance, and the nature of the problem, the research question, or purpose, that is what is known. The second paragraph, what is unknown, the importance of the problem and the unclear issues. And then the last paragraph, you state the rationale, the hypothesis, the main objective, or the purpose why you are carrying out the study. And please, when you are writing introduction, or when you are writing your objectives, please avoid ambiguous phrases like to evaluate. You know, evaluation is a different word entirely. It connotes so much meaning. In quantitative research, We are very, very specific. We are doing qualitative research or mixed methods. You can use those kind of words. Now, statement of the problem is not what we write mostly in health sciences, but some, even in medical area, but some fields like nursing, those who do qualitative study or mixed methods, there must be, there's a way you write statement of the problem. But then things like conceptual framework or theoretical framework, again, those are different lectures on their own. If you have to write those things, then that's a different lecture entirely. Theoretical framework and conceptual framework are very different.
Are you also confused about the difference between the theoretical and the conceptual framework? One aspect of research creation that seemed to be very challenging for every student, be it senior high school, college, or graduate studies, is distinguishing between the theoretical and the conceptual framework. It requires a comprehensive understanding of both frameworks in order to conduct a good research. Hence, in this edition, I will explain the two concepts in easily understandable language.
Well, like I said, that's another lecture itself, but there is a grant method. If your work involves writing a theoretical and conceptual framework, the theoretical framework is like the lens through which you are looking at your research. For instance, if you want to build a house, are you building a duplex or a bungalow or a semi-detached or whatever? That is like the theoretical framework. But the conceptual framework is the details of how the rooms connect to each other. But like I said, that is a lecture on it. So now literature review, very, very critical. Some find this very, very difficult to write. But your literature review is a selection of available documents and then the evaluation of these documents in relation to the research you are trying to do. So you are looking at the research question or the hypothesis, and you are pointing your readers to what experts in the field have written. So it's a very critical aspect of writing your proposal or your dissertation. But there are some general principles. Again, some of these topics are lectures on their own. Writing literature review or writing literature, it's a very, very broad area. But still on principles, please consult 2 or 3 credible databases, avoid publications that are old, and read the full text articles. If you have not read an article, don't cite it, because what the abstract may say may not give you the whole picture of what you are saying. So what is the purpose of your literature review? It gives you a good knowledge of the field of interest. It enhances the knowledge of relevant methodologies. It helps you to narrow a problem, and then it helps you to generate hypotheses, research questions, or questions for further studies. And your literature review is a way you are starting a long-term study of interest in a particular area. One of the trends I've seen is that when people do their thesis or dissertation in a particular area, they become so expert in those areas that even their supervisors may not know some of the things they come across. And that is what happens every time. I'm supervising, I think, 3 PhD students now, about 3 or 4 fellows, maybe 1 or 2 master students. They are all very experts in those areas where they are working. They know it more than I do because they've mastered the literature. They've taken time to familiarize themselves with what is current in the field. So it's very, very good to do that. Some institutions now prefer a systematic review than a narrative review. But like I said, reviews, there are about 10 types of reviews. There's scoping review, there's rapid review, there's mixed methods review, there's umbrella review, all kinds of review that are possible. But the literature review process involves selecting a topic, searching and choosing the literature, analyzing and interpreting the literature, and then writing a review. Now, each one of these is a broad topic on its own, which I may not be able to dilate upon in our discussion, so we can go and do other things for this Saturday. But luckily now, there are AI tools that can help you with your literature review. Actually, I have a slide towards the end of this presentation that has very nifty AI tools that you can use to help your literature review. But don't look at PubMed alone if you want to do a detailed literature review. There are all kinds of databases. Medline is just one of them. It contains only about 30% of references you can get. There are others, Embase, Scopus, Cochrane Library, Google Scholar. And then you must know how to use the mesh feature of PubMed if you want to do a literature search. Mesh is medical subject headings, helps you to really make your search very, very useful. If you go to PubMed, there are tutorials that you can read to help you use that mesh aspect. But journals are not the only sources of information that you can use for literature. There are conference proceedings, there are technical reports, there are other people's theses and dissertations, personal communications, even textbooks. So still on the literature review process, I said there are four processes, four ways. But the third part is to analyze and interpret your literature, and then you write it. And then the way you write it too has different schemes. You can write your literature review in a topical manner. You can write it in a chronological order. You can use problem, cause, solution order. You can go from general to specific. You can go from specific to general. You can go from known to unknown. You can go from comparison and contrast order. Like I said, that's a different lecture on itself. But let's go to materials and methods. Now, this is a very critical aspect of your proposal or your dissertation, because here you're telling the world the detailed way you conducted your exam, your study. And it should be so explicit that anybody should be able to do what you have done using the same methods. So providing sufficient details is very, very critical. Okay. Although don't write it like a laboratory manual. If you are using somebody's methods, you will cite that method, particularly those of us who do basic sciences research. You don't have to write it into that detail, but you reference that method, and if you have modified it, you specify the modification. If you are using controls, let us know and how you selected the controls. And then you highlight critical steps for precaution in your literature review. Now let's go to results. Results contain all the data to support the hypothesis that you have proposed in your introduction section. And you use it to weave a coherent story, and you must communicate the facts, the results, the data in a logical, transparent manner. There is a way I advise my proteges and my supervisors to do it. Your results must follow your objectives. If you have objective 1, 2, 3, and 4 in your dissertation, the first tables, the first set of your results will tell us who you actually examined. So that's the demographics. But subsequently, the results you are showing, either table or graph, will follow that order. And then you also discuss in that order. So you must be careful when you are writing your objectives, write them in such a way that they follow a very logical order, where one can lead to the other, can lead to the other. And it makes your work organized, makes it also a delight to read. Now, how do you present your results? Do you present using graphs or tables? Tables you use to display precise numerical values. Figures, better for conveying trends of proportion. So, but whatever you use must be clear, must be succinct, and the charts and photographs can quickly convey primary findings of research. I actually love graphs. I'm a graph person. Now, the figure legend should provide this description of the figure. Each symbol in the figure you must interpret, you must explain, and then the labels must be clear, must be very clear. And then the table should be self-explanatory. And textual description should summarize and highlight table content, not to repeat it. So it's not that whatever you have put in the table, you are now using another figure to explain it. No. I have So I've said your results, you arrange it in a logical manner, you cross-check references to figures in the text, and then you give proper credit to the figures and tables that you take from other sources. If you are taking figures from another source, please quote that source. All statistical analysis that you have done, you must describe them into details. And then if there are specific trends, significant effects, similarity and contrast, exception, limitation, you must describe. Now, there are common pitfalls of results. Some data are presented in both figure and table. You shouldn't do that. Some data are presented in table. Some data that you present in table can be simply stated. For instance, you are having a figure showing sex, male and female. You can write that in prose without making any force out of that. And then if there are unusual trend in the data that you don't highlight, is also a pitfall. Now, your discussion must communicate the significance of your findings, and you must indicate how they support or refute experimental hypotheses. And your discussion must describe how these results advance your field of study. So now you ask your question, the main point from your result, have you picked it up? Some will say that is the area you even start to discuss. So in your discussion, the main point from your results must be emphasized. And then you link that to past literature. And then you also now profile your own reason. Although you're finding this is the same with what people have found in other places, but you have to explain why. Your discussion should not just be a restatement of your results. You are now trying to build theory, or you are now trying to conceptualize the problems. You are even trying to speculate, but you must substantiate it with your own data, because that is the essence of what your discussion brings out your mastery of that area. That this is what I found, and this is what I think is responsible for what I found. And then you conclude using the strongest and most important statement from your observations, okay? And so many other things about conclusion. But what are the contributions to new knowledge that your thesis has made? Does your work suggest interesting or further things to do? What are the broader implications of your work? So much to talk about. I talked about references and bibliography the other time. These are the differences between the two of them, but I think we have discussed them. Now, please pay attention to this slide. There are some smart AI tools that you can use in your academic writing, some of them. I've been doing this academic writing for 30 years or so. And I can tell you that when we started, it was a lot of suffering, because even trying to do your references is punishment, you know. It's a lot of punishment. But nowadays, you have so many nifty tools that can help you to do your work very, very nicely. So many nifty tools to do your work. Hello, mo wà lórí lecture kan, màá pè yín padà sí. I hope you can still hear me.
Yes.
So I said, pay attention to this slide. Literature search and synthesis. Chat PDF. If you have PDF that is long, you can actually use Chat PDF to synthesize information from a particular PDF. There is lit maps, there is site, there is this space. Please go and explore all these AI tools. They can be very, very useful. So for literature search and synthesis, I've listed up to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them. For writing and grammar, Grammarly, Rightful, Paperpal, Academic Phrase Bank. Even for graphics and illustrations, GraphMaker, BioRender, Canva. For references, Zotero, EndNote, Mendeley. For workflow and organization, Notion. for plagiarism check, Turnitin, so many of them. I did this with Bowrender and wanted to give a lecture on human breath and bread biopsy and all that. So I just used Bowrender, just tried my hand. Very, very nice, very nifty. So these are some of the AI tools. I want to stop there for now so that we can have some time to take questions. I think I've spent like 1.5 hours trying to talk about this. So I'm happy to take questions and discussions at this point.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof, for the wonderful session. It's been a very an eye-opening session. So I think you took us from the basics. In fact, you taught us some grammar and English session today. Thank you very much. So I'm very sure my colleagues and everyone on the call have learned a lot from this session, and your discussion would have generated a lot of questions and comments from them. So we'll give room for questions, comments now. So you can indicate by raising your hand virtually, and then you can also write on the comment section so that we can read your question out. So please kindly indicate by raising your hand if you have questions or comments for Prof.
To write a concept note. No, a concept note is just like a brief description of what you want to do. I'm just trying to bring up one now. You know, I apply for TED Fund. I'm just trying to bring up a concept note. There are different styles to write it, but basically, it's just a very brief. It's not a proposal. It's not. It's a very brief, maybe like a page or half a page, just to describe what you want to do. So that is what the concept note is all about. It's not a proposal. It's not a thesis or dissertation. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Are there other questions? Okay. Okay, sir. There is a question on the comment section. Somebody asked, what is the percentage of plagiarism acceptable for both colleges, sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll reframe that question. When you use a software like Turnitin, it will give you a similarity index score that shows how similar your work is to other works. So some colleges will say that you don't have more than 10 or 15%. Well, that's a guide, because if the similarity score is high, that means you are just copying and pasting what other people have written. And that is just not how to go about it. But the truth is that you can have 1% similarity score and still be guilty of plagiarism. Plagiarism is a big thing. I have lectures on that as well, on referencing and plagiarism. So, I don't know what the colleges are saying, but if anybody is saying 50, I think maybe 10, 15%, I don't know what they are requesting. But usually most body will say not more than 10% similarity index. But the truth is that you can have 1% similarity index and still plagiarize. So don't be fixated on the percentages. If you run your work through plagiarism detector software like Turnitin, the onus is on you and your supervisor. Any area that is as indicated as plagiarism, then you have to look at them one by one, because like I said, 1% similarity index can still get you into trouble. And nowadays, globally, plagiarism is serious. It's like you killed somebody. I cited the example in my supervisor's lab. This was like 15 years ago. Somebody presented her MSc thesis and she was accused of plagiarism, but they said it was an unconscious plagiarism or something like that, unintended plagiarism. But they still gave her a 2-year ban. that you can't present your work. You have to, your MSc, you can't pass it now. You have to come back in 2 years and represent it after you have corrected the plagiarism. And the way to avoid plagiarism is to paraphrase. You must learn how to paraphrase. There are software now. Like I said, so many nifty AI tools that can help you. The way to prevent plagiarism is to paraphrase. You can use somebody's ideas, but not in their own words. You use it in your own words. It's the same idea, but you use it in your own words, but you still reference them because that idea is original to them. So that's how to avoid plagiarism. So don't be fixated on similarity index. They will just say 10, 15%, but that one is not the thing. You can still be guilty, even if it's 1%. So the onus is on you and your supervisor to do due diligence. Somebody is talking about the slides. The slides are available. I'm happy to share them. Some of these slides, some parts of it I've used in other presentations. So I have a ready source of slides for different kinds of workshops that I run here and there. So please bring the questions coming. I'm still waiting for.
Yes, sir. Okay,
Well,
the
I'm
other
on.
question
Okay.
then said, thank you once again, Prof. Sir. Please, regarding sample size estimation, can the formula for randomized control trial be used for a quasi experimental study design? Thank you, sir.
Well, generally, I will need to. I just gave a lecture, the training at National Sample Size, um, at the National Sample Size Estimation for different studies. Yeah, you can use it. There's no law about it. Although most of the study sample size formula assume a random selection of patients where the selection is not random. You use what is called a design effect. But it's okay. If you are doing any study, actually, it's always better to consult a statistician so you're on the path of safety. Yeah, you can use it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Your assumption is what is very, very important critically. Are you the effect size, the power, and then the level of statistical significance you want to accept? The literature review is chapter 2, but sometimes at what point should you work on this? Somebody says, thank you for the lecture. The literature review is chapter 2, but it's sometimes the longest in the book. At what point of research you won't work on it? Well, as soon as you decide on your topic, and you've written your introduction, then you can do your literature review. Like I said, it shouldn't be too long too. It should be about 25% of your dissertation. So it's always good to be concise. And then some people's literature review is too long. You know, you are writing about a topic and you now go to history, you go to details of biology, which are totally not relevant to your specific hypothesis. You shouldn't do that. Although it should be sufficiently long, but it should also not be unduly too long. So, but like I've given you a guide, well, just about 25% of what you are writing. There's another question. Reading the question now. Okay, at the start of the lecture, you mentioned that our research shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. If a study has been done in a Western country, can we do it in our setting? By all means, yes. Does that mean that the work isn't original? It's original. Once you do it in a different setting, it's still original. Even if you do the same study that somebody has done at different times in the same setting, it's still original. My PhD work was a repetition of what my supervisor did 10 years before. But by the time she did the study on HIV positive patients, at that time, there were no antiretroviral therapy. So when I did my own study, similar but a little bit more extensive than what she did, at this time, the patients had the antiretroviral therapy. And the results we got were totally different. When she did the study before antiretroviral therapy, the yeast were extremely aggressive. But the yeast that I started to study, they were so tame. The virulence factors, they were so tame. It just shows that the antiretroviral drugs have done their work. So by all means, yes, if somebody has done a study, but you can repeat it in a different environment. In the same environment, you can even repeat it at a different time. Yes, I've seen the request. I'm surprised Professor Oji is on this. I don't know what we want to teach professors again. They are the ones who should be teaching us. But by all means, I'll make the presentation available. Now, there's another question. Is confidence interval of 90% acceptable for biomedical research? Sure. You can have 90%, you can have 95%, you can even have 99%. The way it is, confidence interval just tells you how sure you are of the estimate. I hope you know what confidence intervals are really. Again, I have another lecture on understanding confidence intervals and p-values. Confidence interval is what a lot of people don't understand. But confidence interval gives you an idea of how precise your estimate is. And so a 90% confidence interval is not as reliable as a 99% confidence interval. In the 99% confidence interval, which is wider than the 90% confidence interval, you are sure that your true population estimate is within that range. But 90% confidence interval, you are not as confident as in 99%. The question 2 is the Taro-Yamane formula. Now, I don't know about this Taro-Yamane formula. I don't know about Taro-Yamane formula. Is it a formula for calculating sample size? I don't know what the Taro-Yamane formula is. How many research objectives are acceptable in dissertation? That's an excellent question. For a dissertation, it's not cast in stone, but for a fellowship dissertation, a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5 is okay. But if you are doing a PhD, you can have up to 6. My PhD thesis has, I think I have about 6 or 7 objectives, because it must be sufficiently voluminous, has enough depth to qualify for a PhD. Somebody said, sir, you mentioned p-value as the lowest level of determining association. Can you explain some of other measures that we can use to interpret study results? Yes, by all means. If you are doing martial arts, or you are climbing the stairs and you are climbing, let me use, because some people may not be familiar with martial arts, but you are trying to climb stairs. The stairway is about 10 levels. The p-value is just the smallest level. And p-value, you are just testing hypothesis. Okay, p-value has so many fallacies, which I don't have time to go into, but you are testing a hypothesis, and there are all kinds of errors that come with hypothesis testing. But you can have a type 1 error and you can have a type 2 error. A type 1 error is a false positive error and a type 2 is a false negative error. In a type 1 error, the null hypothesis is true. There's really no difference. But you now come up and say, Eureka, found it. And then the type 2 error is a false negative error. There's actually a difference. There's an association. You fail to detect it. So the probability of making errors is what is tied to your p-values. Inferior way of looking at evidence of any research activity. It's not evidence of absence. The fact that you didn't find something doesn't mean that it's true. And then p-value is testing a hypothesis, not really looking at the difference Not looking at the clinical difference. For instance, the p-value can be statistically significant, whereas the clinical difference is just useless. For instance, you are testing, so for instance, if you want to test a new drug to look at the effect of that new drug on controlling systolic blood pressure, you are comparing with amlodipine. So if amlodipine is able to reduce systolic blood pressure on an average by 15 millimeter of mercury, and this your wonder drug is able to reduce it by, on an average, by 17 millimeter of mercury. If you have a big sample size, the p-value can be very, very significant, but the clinical effect is just useless. So other levels of evidence, confidence intervals are there. And then you also look at Bayesian statistics, evidence of if there's probability of association. So many levels. Again, that is something that involves a bigger discussion, but I hope, so don't run away with p-values. What are the effect sizes that produce those p-values? You should be more interested in that. Are they clinically significant? And then you can have a problem with p-value even from your sampling, from so many problems with p-values. But people have given p-value a life of its own. And one of the things I try to do is to break that. The p-value is like a straw house. You just build it so that you can break it down. Okay. Stating your hypothesis, do you state it following a general or specific objective? I'm trying to understand that. Please, and for stating your hypothesis, do you state it following your general or specific objective? Well, it depends on what you are like trying to look at. But your hypothesis testing actually follows your objective, either general or specific. You are telling us what exactly you are trying to investigate in that particular study. So that's how I can answer that. I can't see any question again in the chat box that I can see here.
Okay. Thank you very
So
much, Prof. Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful presentation and your calmness and your generosity by sharing your time and knowledge with us today, sir. So before we, as the association, we still plan to hold more sessions in the nearest future, and I will pray for your indulgence to I invite you anytime we need you, sir. So also, I'd like to appreciate our teacher, Professor NSOG, for joining us today. We're also surprised seeing you on the course, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And on behalf of the president, I also want sir? Hello, sir. Okay. So on behalf of the president, I also want to appreciate our members from other centers. I can see members from Udut, University of Marie Curie Teaching Hospital, and I can also see the Owotade of some centers in this on this call today. Thank you very much. So before we round up, I would like to invite the president in person of Dr. Niyi for the closing remark. Owotade.
Thank you, the Deputy General Secretary, Dr. Oladipo. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are. Thank you.
Yeah, distinguished colleagues, esteemed members, and our referent speaker, Professor Owotade. As we bring this enlightening section to a close, I am filled with a profound sense of gratitude and pride. Today's discourse on proposal writing and research methodology has not only equipped us with invaluable insight, but has also reaffirmed our commitment to academic excellence and professional growth. On behalf of the Association of Resident Doctors, OUTAC, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished facilitator, Professor F.J. Owotade, for sharing his wealth of knowledge and expertise with us. Sir, your dedication to advancing research and mentoring the next generation of medical professionals is truly commendable, as we are deeply honored by your impactful contribution today. So to my fellow doctors, your active participation during this webinar demonstrates the passion and drive that define us as an association. Let us take the knowledge gained today and apply it to our individual and collective pursuit, ensuring that our research endeavor not only address pressing medical challenges, but also elevate the standard of our profession. Finally, let me reiterate that the Association of Resident Doctors, OETAC, remains steadfast in its mission to empower every member with opportunities for growth and innovation. Together, we'll continue to push boundaries, embrace new challenges, and solidify our legacy of excellence. Thank you all for making this section a success. Let us keep the spirit of learning alive as we move forward. Wishing you all continued success in your endeavors. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Okay. So thank you very much, Putad, for that excellent closing remark. And so for those that asked for the slide, so it will be shared appropriately. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us today. I think we can bring the program to a close.